Well, here we are in the reading room, and we are reading our last chapter in God is Red. You'll notice I put the logo back there, so we're back to the tree instead of the balloons that we had for a couple weeks now for our 200. We passed 200. Round of applause, round of applause. And our 3 classrooms, the reading room, bookless, and early birds have been here since the beginning. So we are happy to, we as in me, the crew, they took off. Or they haven't come back from lunch, so I'm assuming they took off. Anyway. Let's go ahead and get started. I think it's a short chapter. You will note that there's plenty of book left, right? And that has everything to do with notes and commentary. So I'll let you know if there's anything in the notes and commentary that is, I'll probably do a little bit of a deep dive on our 4 days off, but I have to have a book to get us started tomorrow. And I've already decided, drum roll please. A Dangerous Idea, the Scopes Trial, the original fight over science in schools by Debbie Levy. This I also borrowed from the Plymouth Public Library over there. And so I do need to figure out if I'm going to take it back, how this is going to work out chapter-wise. But this book we should be able to go through it pretty quickly. This is as far as I am, and it's so good. It's just so good. So we'll talk about a background tomorrow, and we're going to start reading by Debbie Levy, A Dangerous Idea. All right. Chapter 16, Religion Today, by Vinnie Deloria Jr. God is Red. In preceding chapters, we have made tentative comparisons between Christian doctrines and beliefs and some of the beliefs of Indian tribal groups which appear to stand in direct opposition. The opposition is more than merely conceptual. It colors the manner in which non-Indians view the world and the people they deal with in that world, particularly Indians. While many Christian doctrines have now passed into the sphere of Western civilization's general beliefs, others continue to form the basis of Christian belief and determine in large measure the manner in which Christians understand the world and form their responses to its events. Opposing tribal concepts to Christian concepts exists. Does not mean that tribal conceptions are necessarily correct because Christianity is wrong. Rather, the fact that Christianity is unable to speak to certain problems without facing internal collapse of its doctrinal structure means that of the possible alternative answers, one starting point must certainly be the ideas found in American Indian tribal religions. Balanced against the tribal religions, however, is the fact that for the most part, these religions provided for a meaningful existence for a people facing a world far different than the one presently experienced. Whether the old tribal religions can survive prolonged exposure to modern conditions is yet to be demonstrated. In our present situation, we therefore face a most difficult question of meaning. Ecologists project a world crisis of severe intensity within our lifetime, whereas the religious mythologies projecting the existence and eventual salvation of another world had better be correct in their beliefs. It is becoming increasingly apparent that we shall not have the expected destruction of the life cycle of the world ecology. That we shall not have the benefits of this world for much longer. Let me turn this here. The imminent and expected destruction of the life cycle of the world ecology can be prevented by a radical shift in outlook from our present naive conception of this world as a testing ground to a more mature view of the universe as a comprehensive matrix of life forms. Making this shift in viewpoint is essentially religious, not economic or political. The problem of contemporary man, whatever his ethic or cultural background, lies in finding the means by which he can once again pierce the veil of unreality in a religious sense to grasp the essential meaning of his existence. For people from a Western European background or deeply imbued with Christian beliefs, the task is virtually impossible. The interpretation of religion has always been regarded the exclusive property of Western man, and the explanatory categories used in studying religious phenomena have been derived from the doctrines of the Christian religion. The minds and eyes of Western man have thus been rather permanently closed to understanding or observing religious experiences. Religion has become a comfortable ethic for Western man, not a force of undermined intensity and unsuspecting origin that may break in on him. Many thoughtful and useful systems of belief of ancient peoples have been simply rejected a priori by Western thinkers in the religious sphere. This attitude has intruded into Western science and then emerged as criteria by which the world of our experience is judged, condemned, and too often sentenced to death. Many people, for example, have developed astrological systems by which they have charted the nature of relationships between the lives of men and the movement of the planets and stars. Given that modern science now views the universe as an extremely sophisticated electromagnetic complex, the contentions of astrologers as to the influence of the heavens on individual propensities to behave in certain ways may not be as superstitious as it would at first appear. Yet astrology is rejected out of hand by many followers of Western religious thinking because it conflicts with the philosophical problem of free will. For centuries, the Chinese have used and practiced acupuncture as a regular part of their religious and cultural beliefs. The very idea that there might be centers of feeling within the human body that can block off pain and sensation if properly understood was virtually anathema to many Westerners. The same situation exists today with respect to the conception of chakras as defined by some of the Eastern religions. Apparently, such conceptions collide with Western beliefs about the human being composed of body, mind, and spirit. The Neo-Greek beliefs about the soul of man, which have intruded into Christianity, or the Western conceptions of psychology and psychological problems. A number of religions have concentrated on the development of beliefs covering the spirits of places, the relationship of man to animal, bird, and reptile forms of life, and the nature of religious healing. Again, these beliefs have been rejected on dogmatic grounds, not because they were not suitable for the communities which held them as beliefs. The usual answer given to questions about the nature of religion is highly unsatisfactory. Other religions have been given credibility to the extent to which they conformed or paralleled certain Christian doctrines. To the extent to which they varied or were in direct opposition to Christian doctrines, they have been regarded as false and sometimes as deliberate attempts on the part of the Christian devil to mislead people. All these things have been excluded from our consideration. We have been taught to consider problems using logic and conceptions that ignore certain facets of existence. Religious experiences are not nearly as important to Western man as his creeds, theologies, and speculations all products of the intellect and not necessarily based on experiences. Regardless of the experience of a multitude of gods, monotheism has come to be regarded as the highest form of religious knowledge. Yet religions that have achieved a monotheistic doctrine are often rapidly intruded upon by a development of lesser spiritual beings forming a pantheon. When a religion is based in experience, whether it be theological or popular, it seems to be of a polytheistic or pantheon-oriented nature. We cannot be absolutely certain that we are dealing with only one God. The fact that monotheism is logically pleasing does not mean that it is an accurate description of reality. The universe, being somewhat discontinuous in other respects, may also conceivably be discontinuous with respect to divinity. Wotan appears to have amazing resiliency. Yahweh's rainbow still shines in the sky. Ghosts prowl the British Isles. The picture of Jesus is appearing more frequently in unexpected places, and the happy have rain. A more basic question about man's psychological processes must be resolved before we begin to understand the breadth of the nature of religious questions. What are religious experiences? Are they of such a nature that they can only be described in terms of the Western peoples, or do they properly belong to non-Western categories? It is a fact that many societies of man have had definable and satisfactory relationships with some form of divinity almost from the beginning of mankind's journey on the planet. Traditional Western thought, and more specifically traditional Christian thought, has been based on the assumption that these religions have often been cruel delusions perpetrated against primitive societies by religious leaders, shamans, and medicine men seeking personal gain or additional powers, or men forced into trickery to preserve their place in society. We cannot conclude that other people spent centuries in a state of delusion simply because their experiences of God were so different than those of Western peoples. That their experiences could not be either described accurately by Westerners or understood in Western categories of thought does not make them false. The least we can do is to understand that it is in the nature of religion to exert a profound influence within societies and groups and sustain a community or national group over a period of time. This is based on a critical everlasting life kind of concept. Having retreated even or an ability to transform or experience life after death, even in the way that the natives experience it. Having retreated even that much, the Western world must be prepared to analyze religion as a phenomenon that does not necessarily explain the unanswered questions posed by the philosophical mind, but which may in itself cause such questions to occur to all manner of men in a great variety of situations. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that either, right? I mean, I think there's something wrong with doing it for sinister reasons or self-interest, but there is a self-interest innate in our humanity anyway. So as long as a self-interest isn't to a detriment, as in curiosity. Isn't feeding worms to a girl to see if she could fly. I might have done that, but I was really pressured into doing that. Like really pressured. Like really, really pressured. But that's after someone did it to me. If I did. You know the pressures that surround me. Don't act like, oh, pressures, is that what she calls them? As we find religion in the societies of men, there are a number of factors that appear generally to be present as preconditions to religious experiences. While religious experiences may be individual in specific events, the impact of them is generally quickly felt by respective groups of men, so that the individualistic nature of the religion is not that emphasized in Christianity, but that given credence in tribal religions. It's not that emphasized in Christianity, but that given credence in tribal religions. Okay. Shoot. Oh, got it. Here. There are a number of factors that appear generally to be present as preconditions to religious experiences. Believe it or not, that has been studied by psychologists, and I talk about it in positive psychology in a course on transformation. Now, this was a positive psychology course that was, or chapter, that fit in but began to have such a philosophical nature to it, like real transformation. You need to have some kind of a quantum physiology, physicality, science to it, this transformation, right? And so that's kind of a little bit in the science education field that I left off at, in this idea about a real ability to transform. And what does that mean, right? It only needs to mean I give up alcohol if I'm an alcoholic. That's all the transformation needs to mean for that person, possibly, to find God, right? Another person needs to put their hands in his wound in order to find God, right? You know what I'm saying? So we see him in a lot of different ways, and it's been studied by psychologists who are not deemed to be very credible in the area. So if you wanted to be credible in your area of psychology, you really had to get into the thinking of the researchers, which really wasn't focused on things that were really important, like this stuff that we're talking about, a great spirit, capital G, capital S, or a capital G God. See, interestingly enough, you have the prospect of more gods, a non-monotheistic perspective, pantheism, right? But you still use a capital G, capital S. What does that mean? I know what it means. It means that there is a monotheistic viewpoint that is not fallible, even though we do not know what that experience is. And I've said it's energy. Thinking about Father Giamona and these kinds of questions I asked him. And in the last class, I said I was staring at somebody with these because what you were saying was stupid. And here I am. I was thinking at that a young age about Father Giamona as well, because that's so interesting to me. Do I know you, Father Giamona? I was thinking how stupid your answer was, and that I did not, like, I was just like, ugh. And then we had a second conversation. I think I was sick the next day, though. St. Michael's Parish, Father Giamona. Giamona. Good looking guy, though. Say that. Looked like Charlie Conville. Oh, yeah, it did. As we find religions in the societies of men, there are a number of factors that appear generally to be present as preconditions to religious experiences. While religious experiences may be individual and specific events, the impact of them is generally quickly felt by respective groups of men, so that the individualistic nature of religion is not that emphasized in Christianity, but that given credence in tribal religions. That is to say, whatever else a particular experience may be, religion itself exists in specific groups and is probably more a national or tribal affair than either an individual or universal affair. Universal ethics, however, generally do arise during the course of a religion's growth, and rules for conduct of lives and general theories of salvation seem to appear as religions become more mature. The religions that grow in these ways also lose those aspects that give religion its special importance to a society, healing and divination powers. Many Christians will vehemently argue that the places at which religious experiences take place are of no consequence. God, they maintain, was released from the bounds of time and space with the revelation of Christianity. God is thus everywhere at all times, and to define divinity according to sacred or holy places is to limit his powers beyond reason, reducing him to a facade of power and intelligence. The impact of Christianity on the question of time and space, however, was to transfer the problem to another world, thus initially sidestepping the question. The final result of the emphasis was to banish God from any possibility of relating to time and space, thus in effect precluding him from interference with this world. The major step to be taken to understand religion today is to understand the nature of religion as it occurs in specific places. There is a reason why shrines exist over and above the piety of the uneducated religious person who has visions while tending sheep. Mount Sinai, for example, has been a holy mountain for a considerable length of time, thus indicating that it has a religious existence over and above any temporary belief held by particular people. If this concept is true, then economics cannot and should not be the sole determinants of land use. It's getting a little loud here. Where did I stop at? Okay, let me finish this paragraph. Unless the sacred places are discovered and protected and used as religious places, there is no possibility of a nation ever coming to grips with the land itself. Without this basic relationship, national psychic stability is impossible. And that's what the sort of Confederate white supremacist movement is missing, is that You can put your icons up there and call those a religious establishment as supported by your documents now, your U.S. document, your nationalistic documents. But it is missing the national psychic stability that something like morality, irrespective of contract, would produce. A stability that universal morality would produce, that you and your shrines, your political shrines, cannot produce. And we see that by the instability of this nation, caused by not spiritual ideology, real, true, authentic spiritual ideology, but by nationalism. Hold on. This is getting good in chapter 16, as if it wasn't good between 1 through 15. Weren't you paying attention? I'm walking slow because my knee is really bothering me. But once I get up, I sit here for that hour of time and lose my glasses. And then my knee gets, I'm 60 after all. My knee gets really cramped up. But I've been doing that therapy, that electromagnetic therapy, and I'm telling you, it works. I don't know why. Maybe it's sending signals out to everybody to say a prayer for where that's going. I have no idea. God is red says so. I think. A corollary of this concept is the possibility that each land projects a particular religious spirit. Which largely determines what types of religious beliefs will arise on it. Judaism, Islam, and Christianity do not radically differ about the nature of creation and the final days, when even nature is to be renewed. Arising as they did from the desert of the Middle East, it may be that concern with a renewal of that particular land has preformed their religious conceptions. The fact that Druidism is once again rising in parts of Europe may indicate that those lands are largely determining the shape and beliefs of religious experiences are Druid lands. The effort to shift religious thinking so as to examine this theory appears ludicrous to Western men when first proposed. We do not have any exact knowledge of what Druid religious beliefs and practices were. Whether present practitioners are precisely following ancient religious practices is less important than the fact that the religion has contemporary followers who are attempting to make the proper connections with what has gone before. That religion's change is a foregone conclusion. To go from Jesus on the hillside advocating the message of the Beatitudes to a cotton bowl filled with Jesus freaks chanting 2 bits, 4 bits, 6 bits, $1, all those for Jesus, stand up and holler, indicates that anything can occur in a religious tradition. Nearly as important may be the fact that lands can apparently be consecrated by a particular religious group wishing to place its roots in the land. The persistence of some religions on originally foreign lands would appear to testify to the fact that peoples and lands can relate to each other in a very powerful manner to develop a spiritual unity. It may be this possibility that will prove the salvation of Christianity in the modern world. Once having developed roots, as did the 5 nations at the great tree of peace at Anandga, the land and the religion apparently become as one. The Hopi also established themselves on the land. Rather than attempt to graft contemporary ecological concern onto basic Christian doctrines and avoid blame for the current planetary disaster, Christians would be well advised to surrender many of their doctrines and come to grips with the lands now occupied. That certain lands will create divergent beliefs and practices is certainly preferable to extinction. The problem of relating to a place's spirit or alternatively bringing a spiritual reality to a particular place is yet to be understood in the sphere of religious thought. That a fundamental element of religion is an intimate relationship with the land on which the religion is practiced should be a major premise of future theological concerns. Giving a specific land in which a religion can grow, the problem then shifts to the nature of the people adhering to that religion. Is religion necessarily a universal condition for all men, or is it a phenomenon that can manifest itself to different groups of men in different ways? And that's what I've always proposed. The very conception of chosen people implies a lost religious ethnicity. Most probably, religions do not, in fact, cross national and ethnic lines without losing their power and identity. It is probably more in the nature of things to have different groups with different religions. The traditional objection to this concept is that it would create religious wars. If the number of important religious experiences occurring in a specific community were supported by homogeneous culture and political factors, the religion would probably have more impact, and religious wars would not occur. At present, we have wars fought with religious justification as well as religious wars. The past history of the West is eloquent testimony to the fact that a universal religion crossing ethnic lines does not lessen wars. It tends to increase them until one particular ethnic group comes to dominate the religious beliefs of the whole group with its own cultural values. Besides the importance of land, and they are cultural values, they're not morality, and that's the difference, right? So this idea that we can't have many different religions without a conquering attitude, I get you want everybody to be saved. There are different ways that a Goss with vast knowledge and energy and love can figure out how to gather his children, right? And he doesn't even really need me. He could just, cast a net. What? I mean, this or this? He could cast a net and get his children back easily enough that his children would have a certain energy and a net would have a certain energy, and he would be able to cast a net and get his children back. And that's what you better be careful of, right? About surrounding me. He can easily cast a net and make some music. If he wanted to. Faux show. Faux show. Exactly that. Cast a net and make some music. Specifically that, if he wanted to. I mean, it's not even far-fetched physiologically. It's not even far-fetched thought physiologically. Oh, I hate when I do that. There we go. Besides the importance of land and religion, the existence of specific religion among a distinct group of people is probably a fundamental element of man's experience. Once religion becomes specific to a group, its nature also appears to change, being directed to the internal mechanics of the group, not to the grandiose schemes of world conquest or the afterlife. So you can become a religion where you are a vessel for the planet. All of those things really conceptually not very far-fetched, without being a religion that conquers other people's religions and has this concept of salvation or no salvation. That's the concept of afterlife. I use afterlife all the time, but all I'm saying is a transformation from one element of this world to another, or whatever it might be. What a religion does to a group of people on a distinct land is thus a vital question for future analysis. The phenomenon that is most clearly seen among the non-Western religious is the element of healing ceremonies. It is this fact of religious life, Oral Roberts accepted, that appears to dominate land-based religions of particular peoples. One cannot separate the spiritual problems of people from their religion, particularly the tribal religions treat healing as a major part of religious life. Inherent in ceremonial healing practices are powers given to religious men in their visions and religious experiences. The tribal religions look at healing in an entirely different manner than do Christian religion healers. The predictable Christian religious healer builds his audience to a fever pitch, hoping that supreme acts of willpower will release the person from his infirmities. No consideration is given to the people's cultural practice or the particular spirit of the lands on which they live. In a very real way, healing is an abstract process dependent as much on the self-motivations of the infirm as it is on the healer's powers. I agree with you, but that is an evolution of religion that has to occur if it is by false mechanisms separated from the space. That is an evolution that has to occur. I'm not saying it has to occur a long time. I'm not saying that it has to occur forever and that we should not be getting back to the spiritual by now. The spiritual connection between this body, mind, soul, and the earth, right? We shouldn't be getting back to it. But it is an evolution to be able to separate your mind from the space, and a necessity if you think about things like Nazi concentration camps. And from what I understand, Viktor, whatever his last name, and Frank really had the concept from a child's perspective, Viktor Frankl from an adult perspective, how you separate your mind from the body. When your body is captive. Tribal religions do not place as much emphasis on the infirm's rigorous willpower. Rather, specific ceremonies and healing songs and practices are used to cure specific types of sicknesses. And this is something that really is a part of, for example, Alcoholics Anonymous. That giving up your willpower to a higher power. Many Indian religious healers can tell at a glance if they can heal a particular illness. No pretense is made if it appears that the medicine cannot be used for a particular illness. And the healers do not pretend to be able to cure any sickness. The individual medicine man has specific powers, his own gifts received through his experiences. The counterpart of healing is a recognition of his healing powers, limitations. I always say, you know your strengths and know your weaknesses is the way I put it. And there is all kinds of power in that. No, sorry, can't do that. I don't know anything about that. Strengths and weaknesses, know them. Then nobody can criticize you. You're like, you big dummy in that field. I'm like, yeah, kind of, I am. Almost all the healing disciplines came originally from religious beliefs and the religious men's practices. The severance of medicine and psychology from religion has only been a recent event in the histories of religious people. And thank you very much for doing that bullshit. Now we have poison. In the West, it has taken extreme forms, and the rising numbers of psychoanalysts coupled with the declining number of professional clergy testifies to the fact that the religious crisis of Western civilization is taking extreme forms of alienation within itself. I don't happen to think that psychoanalysts and the rise of that, if they are really sincere and authentic, I see them as modern medicine men, being able to rationalize and take in scientific fact as well. Psychoanalysts aren't the devious fiends that people make them out to be. Some of them are. The phenomenon of a substantial number of clergymen suffering psychological problems indicates that religious and mental problems are not being solved as Christianity is presently practiced. Again, in the field of healing, relationships already seen as crucial to tribal religions are prerequisites for receiving healing powers. Healing may indeed be a means of determining the extent to which a religion is strong or weak, declining or growing, and none of the three areas of land, ethnicity, or healing in any set of beliefs required in the traditional sense which Western religious thinkers have defined beliefs. The transition from traditional Western and Christian categories to tribal and non-Western categories of religious experience is not then a matter of learning new facts about life, the world, or mankind's history. It is primarily a matter of participation in terms of the real factors of existence, land a specific community, and religious men with specific powers existing within that community. It is the non-philosophical quality of tribal religions that makes them important for this day and age. Modern society has now reached a stage at which any particular proposition is viewed as particularly or relatively true, but most probably not ultimately true. Truth in the Western scientific sense is what can be verified. In tribal religions, no effort is made to define religion as a system of doctrinal truths about the nature of the world. It cannot therefore be verified, and only in a certain sense can it be experienced by a certain community. The analytical error of contemporary man is that he has not understood in religious terms the meaning of what he has already accomplished scientifically by revealing the world of sensory perceptions and seeking an ultimate answer to the meaning of existence, that is, reading God's mind as early scientists considered their work. Modern man has foreclosed the possibility of experiencing life in favor of explaining it. Even in explaining the world, however, Western man has misunderstood it. Harvey Cox in The Secular City relates, in our time, the cornucopian revolution has reached out to incorporate everything into its sweep. All things are relative. Everything depends on how you look at it. In this statement, Cox echoes the profound confusion of modern Western man and his ability to comprehend how far from his origins he has really come. The theory of relativity in this sense hardly means that all things are relative. It rather means that all things are related. This fundamental premise undergirds all Indian tribal religions and determines the relationship of all parts of creation one to another. As between the two theories of interpreting the world, the impact and implications of the difference are tremendous. All things being relative, no particular thing has an existence of its own for its own sake, but is finite in the worst sense of the term. It lacks identity. Everything becomes an object for scientific scrutiny in the same way in which Christianity theology early relegated the world, the life forms of the world, and God himself to philosophical analysis. Given this type of world, the only conceivable answer to problems was the sermon admonishing, threatening, cajoling, and enticing entities to become what they were not. Self-generated change induced by additional information then became the only solution to the problem of existence. And I do wonder whether or not self-generated change induced by additional information then became the only solution to the problem, or what giving this type of world the only conceivable answer to the problem was sermon admonishing, threatening, cajoling, and enticing entities to become what they were not. That seems to me Chinese communism, or Indian from India, that kind of class system that they have there, that hierarchy. We're going to make you become what you are not. and we don't care about the human spirit because that kind of atheism doesn't believe in a human spirit. The whole thing about that is I could get the categories wrong. You could put a narrative on Chinese people as communists in that way, and they are not. But I do think they are. If all things are related, the unity of creation demands that each life form contribute its intended contribution. Entities are themselves because they have been made to be so. Any violation of another entity's right to existence in and of itself is a violation of the nature of the creation and a degradation of religious reality itself. And from watching that film, which may have been from Matthew, is that what it's called? Robber Barons? From Matthew. Josephson. That movie about was that man Jesus who tried to intercede in all the killings of those Christian people in Japan. Now we get where the anger comes from. And that looks very, very much like a communist symbol, doesn't it? And the red and the round, it sure seems like a communist symbol. We can truly get where the anger comes from Christianity. But that system of the consequences, if there is that system of hierarchy where we'll place you where needed because you can't make that determination, suggests that people don't know how to follow the great spirit that you have are trying to extinguish, or harnessing that kind of energy in a self-fulfilling way. Self-interest, fulfilling self-interest. Self-generated change induced by additional information then became the only solution to the problem of existence. If all things are related, the unity of creation demands that each life form contribute its intended contribution. Its intended contribution, and it demands it, and that's why we see things are so fucked up. Entities are themselves because they had been made to be so. Any violation of another entity's right to existence in and of itself is a violation of the nature of the creation and a degradation of religious reality itself. I read that. Admonitions to generate self-change are a form of insanity, violating the whole nature of reality. There are consequently few sermons preached in the tribal religions. We stand today at a series of crossroads. Rather than revolutionary movements, we may have possibly lapsed into a prolonged period of respectable boredom from which we will never recover. Clearly, the current tendency is to attempt to reclaim the 19th century roots of social existence that can give us a sense of permanency in a world of increasing change. But the stability of that era was at best a mythological memory of a golden age. Our very refusal to acknowledge the failures of both American and world history and our patriotic effort to make it into a golden age show how pathetic and inadequate our tools for confronting change really are. Within the tradition's beliefs, I think that that's not really, confronting change, but confronting criminality, taking advantage, building scenarios. I mean, that's really what you're talking about. Is exactly the evidence for violating somebody else's nature, right? And so they look at that and say it's DNA, or try and put their finger on it scientifically. It really is a perversion of all intentions of a higher spirit that we seem to possess as human beings. Or whatever I am. The human spirit. I mean, we were talking about this in both Bookless and in Early Birds a little bit today. Within the traditions, beliefs, and customs of the American Indian people are the guidelines for mankind's future. It is the spirit of this continent, of all continents, that shines through the Indian anthologies and glimpses in the Indian communities in grotesque and tortured forms. The vision of stability of the community is found by non-Indians who venture into the reservations, and yet in viewing the remnants of Indian religion, they understand neither Indians nor themselves. White America and Western industrial societies have not heard the call of either the lands or their aboriginal peoples. In the appalling indices of social disorder of the tribal peoples, Westerners see only continued disruption, and being unaccustomed to viewing life as a totality, cannot understand the persistence of the tribal peoples in preserving their communities, lands, and religions. The lands of the planets call to mankind for redemption, but it is a redemption of sanity, not a supernatural reclamation project at the end of history. Although it can be, get on effing board. The planet itself calls to the other living species for relief. Religion cannot be kept within the bounds of sermons and scriptures. No, it cannot be kept in those bounds. That doesn't mean people don't need a little boost there. It is a force in itself, and it calls for the integration of lands and peoples in harmonious unity. Harmonious unity. Stop with your bullshit corporations. The lands wait for those who can discern their rhythms. The particular genius of each continent, each river, valley, and rugged mountains, the placid lakes, all call for relief from the constant burden of exploitation. And those motherfuckers who just sit over there and make tree huggers into degenerates. You're assholes. The particular genius of each continent, each river valley, the rugged mountains, the placid lakes, all call for relief from the constant rape. Who will find peace with the lands? The future of mankind lies waiting for those who will come to understand their lives and take up their responsibilities to all living things. Who will listen to the trees, the animals and birds, the voices of the places of the land? As the long forgotten peoples of the respective continents rise and begin to reclaim their ancient heritage, they will discover the meaning of the lands of their ancestors. That is when the invaders of the North American continent will finally discover that for this land, God is red. Oh, I have goosebumps. I have goosebumps. Slowly rising and continuing. Oh my gosh, I have to read it again. That is when the invaders of the North American continent will finally discover that for this land, God is red. Oh. Well, now we know. I'm going to read the notes and commentary, and I'm going to see what I can glean from the notes and commentary for a possible conclusion. Otherwise, I will move on to my other Plymouth Library book, A Dangerous Idea. This one is written at like a 5th, 6th grade level, and I love it. The Scopes Trial, the original fight over science in schools. So we are constantly reading. We are constantly building our vocabulary. We are constantly critically delving into really complex ideas as if we are little Aristotles and Socrates. Thanks so much for joining me here in the reading room, where it looks like tomorrow we're going to put up a different sign, or at least have God is red conclusion, something like that. Thanks for joining me here in the reading room, the classroom. You can find the playlist for God is Red. I always have things added to that playlist. I always develop a playlist and have all of our books added to that playlist besides the large playlist that we have for the classroom, Healthy Mind, Body, Spirit, and all that. Thanks so much for joining me here in the reading room on day 214. It is July 2nd, where we have finished off an unbelievable declaration to Western thought and our day of celebrating our real Declaration of Independence. Oh, Lordy Lord, what we have learned. Thanks for joining me.